I wasn't looking for anything permanent. I just dropped out of college, didn't want to go home, and my savings were circling the drain. So when I saw the job posting, live-in waiter, full board, weekly cash, remote diner on the edge of Mount Sawyer, it felt like fate throwing me a lifeline. Staff meals included sounded like a dream. I hadn't eaten properly in days. The guy who answered my application was short and to the point. No phone interview, just a single line in the reply. Come before sundown. Bring only what you need. We provide uniforms. No mention of who we was. The restaurant was about 90 minutes from the nearest gas station, perched at the end of a winding forest road that didn't even show up on Google Maps. I almost turned around 3 times during the drive, but the thought of a warm meal and a bed kept me going. When I arrived, the sun was setting behind the pines. The building was old but spotless, with a large neon sign that read, "The Dusk Line Diner." A few cars were parked outside, classic ones mostly, too pristine, like they'd been frozen in time. One was a mint green Cadillac with dustless tires. Another was an old Ford with chrome so polished it hurt to look at. A tall, rail-thin man in a crisp white apron stood outside the front door. He watched me the entire time I parked, got out, and walked up the gravel path. "You're on time," he said. His voice was calm but distant, like he was reciting lines he'd practiced. "Name?" "Eli," I replied, glancing nervously at the surrounding woods. "Eli Howard." He nodded. "You'll do it." He handed me a bundle wrapped in butcher paper. Inside was a black and white uniform, shirt, pants, and apron. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and bleach. "Put that on, and read the rules on the back of the door before you enter the kitchen." "Rules?" The man didn't answer. He just stepped aside and held the door open. Inside, the diner looked like something out of a preserved 1950s postcard. Red vinyl booths, checkerboard floors, chrome fixtures. Soft jazz drifted from an old jukebox in the corner. But it was empty. No cooks, no customers. The kitchen, however, was bustling. 2 other staff members moved like clockwork, prepping dishes with eerie synchronicity. Neither of them acknowledged me. One chopped onions, the other stirred something thick and brown in a pot. The smell was incredible, but also wrong. Too rich, almost sweet. Then I saw the rules, neatly tacked to the back of the swinging kitchen door. Dusk Line Diner, Staff Protocol. Customers arrive at exactly 7:07 p.m. Do not open the doors before then. Do not speak to the customers unless they speak first. They may ask for food that's not on the menu. If they do, tell the chef. If a customer leaves something behind, do not touch it. They will all leave at 8:33 p.m. If one stays behind, do not acknowledge them. Wait in the kitchen until they disappear. Never, ever ask them why they always come back. I read the list 3 times. No one explained it. No one welcomed me to the team. At 7:05 p.m., the kitchen went quiet. The 2 staff members stood at attention, facing the double doors. At 7:07 exactly, the diner bell chimed. A dozen customers walked in all at once. They weren't weird-looking. They looked normal, too normal, like someone's memory of people. One woman had a perfect bun and pearls. A man wore a Letterman jacket and whistled a low tune. A kid clutched a stuffed bear with no eyes. They sat in their usual booths. No menus, no greetings. Then the chef behind me tapped my shoulder. "Time to serve," he said without looking at me. I stepped out with the first tray. The man in the Letterman jacket turned to me and smiled. "You're new," he said softly. I nodded. "Do you know why we keep coming back?" I froze. My mouth went dry. I remembered Rule 6. I didn't answer. His grin widened, but not with amusement, with hunger. I didn't answer the man in the Letterman jacket. I just stared, gripping the tray tight enough to leave impressions in the plastic. Then I turned and walked away without a word, delivering the next plate to the woman with the pearl necklace. She never blinked, just stared at the untouched utensils in front of her, as though waiting for something other than food. The whole room had that feeling, like they were pretending to be human. The chef, his name was Marcus, I'd later learn, handed off dishes with quiet urgency. Each plate had a name scribbled on the rim in red ink. None of them were names I recognized. Some were in languages I didn't know. The customers never ordered. They just received their food, gave a polite nod, and began eating in slow, methodical bites. At first, I thought it was just some strange tradition. But then I noticed something wrong with the food. A plate passed to me had what looked like a steak, perfectly seared, still steaming. But when I looked closer, I saw the muscle fibers didn't run the way beef should. The grain twisted into unnatural spirals. The meat shimmered faintly under the diner lights, like it had a pulse. I almost dropped the plate. Marcus caught my hesitation. "Don't think about it," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Smile, deliver, nod." I nodded, smiled, delivered. The man in the booth at the back, tall, bald, wearing a too small hat, asked for something not on the menu. I remembered Rule 3. I told Marcus. He didn't respond. He just walked to a hidden drawer near the freezer, pulled out a jar of thick gray paste, and spooned a heap of it onto a silver saucer. He didn't warm it, season it, or explain what it was. He just sent me back out with it. I tried not to look at the man's face as I placed the plate in front of him, but curiosity is a cruel thing. His eyes were wrong, not in the horror movie kind of way, just misplaced, like they'd been drawn on and someone had nudged them a little too far apart. When they focused on me, I felt something in my gut twist, like I was being unmade from the inside out. "Thank you," he said. His voice was deep, not loud, but it echoed in my ears like I'd heard it inside my skull instead of through the air. I stepped back into the kitchen and stood beside Marcus, my hands trembling. "Good," he said. "You didn't ask anything. You'll last longer than the last guy." "What happened to him?" I asked before I could stop myself. Marcus didn't look at me, just stirred something thick and dark in a metal pot. "They don't like to be asked questions. They come here for silence, routine, order." "Who are they?" He sighed. "Wrong question, Eli." The clock on the wall hit 8:31 p.m. The customers finished their meals with the same synchronized grace they'd started with. No one left early. No one lingered at their tables. They all rose together and filed toward the door without speaking. Chairs scraped the floor in perfect unison. At 8:33 on the dot, the bell over the door rang for the last time. Silence fell over the diner. Marcus sagged visibly. He rubbed his forehead with the back of his wrist and let out a long breath. "You can sit now. They're gone." I collapsed into the nearest booth. The other two staff members finally spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. One introduced herself as Donna, the other was Emilio. Neither smiled. "They come every night," Donna said. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Same seats, same orders, same time," Emilio added. "But why?" I asked. All three of them stared at me in dead silence. Then Marcus reached into his apron and pulled out a folded paper. It looked worn from being read too many times. He slid it across the table. It was a list of names, some crossed out in red, some circled in blue. My name was at the bottom, not crossed out, not circled, just there. "What is this?" I asked. "It's the list," Marcus said. "You'll understand soon. But for now, just show up. Do the job. Don't ask." The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back. But when I woke up, I was still in the booth. Same clothes, same tray beside me. The door creaked open by itself. The clock read 6:66, and outside the forest was still dark. I should have left. That first night should have been enough. But when I stood up from the booth, groggy, my back was sore, I realized something terrifying. I couldn't remember falling asleep. The lights were still on in the diner. The kitchen was spotless. The floor mopped. Everything in its place. But the forest outside the windows? Still pitch black, like the sun hadn't risen at all, like time had stopped somewhere between one breath and the next. I stepped outside into the cold, the gravel crunching under my sneakers. No car, no road. The path I'd driven up the night before was gone, replaced by dense trees and mist. I turned back to the diner in a panic. It was the only thing that looked real. When I stepped back inside, Marcus was already there, cleaning a glass that didn't need it. "You stayed," he said without looking at me. "I didn't mean to. I didn't even sleep. I just woke up here." He nodded. "That's how it starts." "How does it start?" Donna appeared from the back, already in uniform. She placed a steaming mug of black coffee in front of me and sat across the booth. "You're part of the loop now," she said. "The minute you read the rules, the place keeps you." "Like a curse?" "No," Emilio said as he entered. "A contract. You accepted the terms when you took the uniform. There's no quitting." I looked around at all of them, searching for a crack in the performance. A smirk, a laugh, something to tell me this was all just some elaborate hazing, but their faces were stone. Marcus sighed. "Let's get through the second night. Then you'll see for yourself." He handed me a new list of names, slightly different from the last. A few were missing, 3 were new. My name was still at the bottom. This time, it had a faint circle drawn around it, blue ink. "Do the customers change?" I asked. "They rotate," Donna said. "Some disappear. New ones take their place. But a few, they're always here." "What happens to the ones who disappear?" Emilio didn't answer. He just made the sign of the cross. The bell chimed at 7:07 p.m. sharp. And, just like the night before, they came in. Smiling, blinking, walking in sync like puppets on invisible strings. They sat in the same booths, ordered nothing, spoke in that flat, lifeless way that made my skin crawl. But this time, I noticed something new. One of them, a girl who looked maybe 10 years old, dressed in a red wool coat and holding a doll, sat alone at a table near the back. She hadn't been there last night. Her eyes followed me every time I passed. When I set her plate down, some kind of gray soup that smelled like damp leaves, she tilted her head and asked, "Do you know where you are yet?" I froze. Rule 2 flashed in my mind. Do not speak to the customers unless they speak first. But this wasn't just small talk. Her voice didn't carry like the others. It was sharp, precise, intentional. "I don't," I said quietly, breaking the rule. Her smile was subtle but unmistakable. "Good. That means it hasn't eaten you yet." I backed away, my hands shaking. Marcus called me into the kitchen and shut the door behind me. "She talked to you?" he asked. I nodded. "Did you respond?" I hesitated, then nodded again. Marcus exhaled through his nose and looked tired. "One warning. That's all you get. If one of them reaches out, Don't reach back. Ever. Why? What happens if I do? He looked me dead in the eyes. You make the list. I'm already on the list. No, he said. You're not on their list. Not yet. I didn't ask what that meant. At 8:33 p.m., the bell rang again. Chairs scraped in unison. Plates untouched were left steaming on the tables. The customers filed out one by one, except the little girl. She remained in her booth, staring out the window at the black trees. Rule 5. If one stays behind, do not acknowledge them. Wait in the kitchen until they disappear. Marcus grabbed me by the wrist before I could step toward her. No, he whispered. You broke one rule tonight. Don't break two. I watched through the window on the swinging kitchen door. The girl didn't move. She didn't blink. She just sat there, whispering to the doll in her lap. It was only when the clock hit 8:45 that she slowly stood, placed a single coin on the table, and walked out the front door. The moment she crossed the threshold, the neon lights flickered and died. I turned to Marcus. What was that? I asked. His reply came without hesitation. A test. After that night, I stopped asking questions. I wanted to believe I still had a choice, that I could pack my bag, march out into the mist, and find the road that led back to something normal. But each morning I woke up in that same booth, the sky outside still black, the trees still frozen in that suffocating silence. And each time I opened my eyes, the list was already on the table. My name circled. The blue ring was darker now, like it had been traced over again and again. On the third morning, Donna brought me breakfast. Eggs that tasted too sweet and toast that left my mouth dry for hours. She sat across from me, fidgeting with the edge of her apron. Has she talked to you again? She asked quietly. The girl? Number. She will. They always do once you answer. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked down at the new list. A name I hadn't seen before caught my eye. Jude Knox. It was scrawled hastily near the top, like an afterthought. Unlike the others, it didn't have a plate assigned. No table, no notes, just a name. I pointed to it. Who's that? Marcus glanced at it as he stirred something on the stove. Old guest. I used to be a staff member. My stomach twisted. You mean he broke Rule 6, Emilio muttered from across the kitchen. Started asking too many whys. That night, everything felt wrong. The air was thicker, like breathing through cloth. Even the customers seemed different, stiffer, glitching. One woman cut her steak in perfect lines but never actually ate. A man stirred his coffee endlessly, even though it never steamed. The little girl didn't show up, but Jude Knox did. At 7:10 p.m., the door opened, out of sync, and a man walked in alone. Tall, pale, in a server's uniform like mine, but older. His apron was soaked in something dark. Not blood, exactly. Too thick, too black. His eyes scanned the diner slowly until they landed on me. Then he smiled. You're new, he said, settling into the girl's usual booth. They always send someone new. I didn't answer. Marcus stiffened behind the counter. Rule 2 again. Do not speak unless spoken to. But was he a customer? Or something else? You still think you're here by accident? Jude asked. Did you apply for a job? I turned away, pretending to clean the counter, but I could feel his gaze crawling up my spine. They told you the rules to keep you safe, he continued, voice low and too calm. But the rules don't protect you. They bind you. They train you. You're part of the loop now. The next step is understanding why they come. Don't listen, Donna hissed from the kitchen window. He's not on the list. That means he's not supposed to be here. But I couldn't look away. Jude leaned back in his booth, running a finger around the rim of an empty coffee cup. It's not the food. It's not the place. It's you. That's why they come back. My blood ran cold. Then he said it. Do you want to know the real Rule 7? My legs moved on their own. I stepped toward his booth, but before I could answer, the lights overhead flickered violently. Every customer stopped mid-motion. The man who stirred his coffee paused mid-circle. The woman with the steak held her knife aloft. All of them froze in eerie unison, except their eyes, which turned slowly, deliberately, toward me. You asked, Jude whispered. The front door burst open. The wind howled in, dragging with it a smell I'll never forget. Wet leaves, copper, and something like burnt sugar. The customers stood in sync. They turned, not toward the door, but toward Jude. And in that moment, their faces changed. They peeled, not like masks, like paper. Underneath was something smooth, faceless, shimmering with ink that bled like veins across their skin. They walked toward him, slow, unstoppable. Jude didn't resist. He just looked at me and smiled. See you soon, Eli. Then they were on him. The lights popped, plates shattered. The walls groaned like the diner itself was trying to hold back a scream. I backed into the kitchen, heart hammering, as Marcus slammed the door shut and locked it. The sounds stopped. Silence fell. When we opened the kitchen door 10 minutes later, the diner was clean, empty, not a single chair out of place, but the name Jude Knox had been burned into the list, in red, crossed out. Marcus looked at me, grim. They cleaned up the mistake. That's good. But they noticed you. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the list and pointed to my name. The circle was now red. The red circle around my name wasn't ink. It bled. Not a lot, just a faint ooze from the paper's edge where it looped around the letters. But I could smell it. Rust and salt and old copper pipes. When I blinked, it stopped, dried instantly. The name is still there, still circled. But something had changed. The diner knew me now. Marcus didn't say a word. He just walked to the back, grabbed a roll of paper towels and began scrubbing down the counter harder than usual. His face had gone pale, tighter around the eyes. Does this mean they're going to do something to me? I asked. Donna shook her head. Not yet. A red circle doesn't mean you're marked. It means they're watching. Is that better? Emilio answered from across the room. Only if you never make a second mistake. I didn't sleep after that. Not in the booth, not on the cot Marcus let me use behind the freezer. I just stared at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I could still leave, even though I knew the road wouldn't be there. They always come back. That line kept looping in my head. But I was starting to wonder if they included me. At 6:57 p.m., I found a new note taped to the inside of the front door. It wasn't typed like the other rules. This one was handwritten in deep red ink, almost the same color as the circle around my name. Tonight, do not enter booth 9, no matter what you hear. That was it. No explanation, no signature, just the warning. I looked at Donna, who was sharpening knives without ever breaking eye contact with the steel. What's booth 9? Back corner, by the windows. What's wrong with it? She stopped sharpening. Her eyes shifted. Everything. At 7:07 p.m., the bell chimed. The customers poured in, same as always. The man with the Letterman jacket, the woman with pearls, the man who never drank his coffee, all in their places, all in their routines. Except tonight, booth 9 was empty. But not for long. At 7:18, the front door creaked open again. A man walked in. Tall, thin, hunched like his bones bent wrong. His suit was gray, soaked at the hem. And though his eyes were sunken, distant, he looked almost familiar. Then I realized why. He looked like me. Or like a version of me that hadn't slept in weeks. His hair was damp and matted, and his left hand twitched uncontrollably. He walked past the other booths without acknowledging anyone, even though the customers all stopped eating to watch him pass. He sat down in booth 9. The moment he did, every bulb in the diner dimmed by half. Marcus whispered, "Stay out of that booth." I nodded. The man, the copy of me, leaned forward and rested both hands flat on the table. He didn't order anything, didn't look around. But after a few minutes, he began to whisper. At first, I couldn't make out the words. Then, slowly, syllables crept through the diner like smoke curling beneath the door. "Eli, you're tired. You're bleeding time. You never left. You never will." I tried to ignore it. I kept my head down, delivered the steak to table 3, refilled water at table 7. But the whispers grew louder. "You remember what you did, don't you? You opened the door. You let it in." Every time I looked away, my eyes drifted back to him. Booth 9. The version of me that shouldn't exist, that shouldn't be speaking. "You asked the wrong question, Eli, and now you're not just on the list." He grinned. "You're becoming it." The silverware on the tables began to vibrate. Plates rattled. The coffee at booth 2 rippled like something moved beneath the surface. Donna hissed, "Go to the kitchen. Now." But I was frozen. The man in booth 9, my double, lifted his hand. His fingers were gone. In their place were strands of something black and flickering, like the static from an old TV. Booth 9 was meant for you. The door to the booth slammed shut on its own. The lights popped. When they came back on, the booth was empty. But something was left behind. A folded napkin. Marcus stepped out slowly, using tongs to pick it up. He opened it. Inside was a single line. "Tell Eli the circle is closed." My legs gave out. I hit the floor, gasping. Donna crouched beside me. "You have one night left," she said softly. "One night?" She nodded. "To decide whether you're staying." "Staying where?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slid something across the floor. My old phone. It had no battery, but the screen lit up anyway. One new notification, a calendar reminder, blinking red. Reservation confirmed. Booth 9, tomorrow 7:07 p.m. I didn't speak much that final morning. Not to Marcus, not to Donna, not even to myself. I just sat in the booth, my booth, and stared at the calendar notification on the dead phone, still glowing long after its charge should have drained to dust. Reservation confirmed. Booth 9. Every part of me wanted to run, but run where? I'd already tried opening the front door before sunrise. All I saw was forest, fog, the same 2 pine trees standing like sentinels, no matter how far I walked. This place wasn't in the world. It was just adjacent to it, folded into the creases of some reality where clocks could bleed and rules had teeth. At noon, Marcus placed a cup of black coffee in front of me. "You still have a choice," he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "You told me no one leaves." He shrugged. "We all lie, sometimes to others, sometimes to ourselves. Is that how you got here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me the final list. 10 names, all crossed out, except one, Eli Howard. The red circle had changed again. It was no longer just around my name. It was my name, each letter bleeding into the shape of the ring itself. a seal, like a stamp burned onto flesh. I flipped the page. The other side was blank until ink began to appear, slowly, like it was being written in real time. Booth 9. Ready. Item requested. Self. Special instructions. Deliver warm. My hands went cold. Marcus took the paper gently and folded it up. Don't go to the booth tonight. Just walk. Out the back door. Don't stop. Don't listen if something calls your name. But there is no back door, I said. There will be. But only once. Emilio pressed a second cup of coffee into my hands, lighter this time with cream and a single sugar. The smell made me dizzy. It reminded me of my childhood, of early mornings and safety and some version of home that didn't exist anymore. At 6:45 p.m., Donna gave me a key. It doesn't fit any door here, she said. Not until it's time. The diner grew still. We all waited. No one prepped the food. No one lit the burners. At 7:06, the air changed. He arrived alone. Same as before. Same gray suit, same wrong gait, the version of me who smiled too wide and flickered at the edges like a corrupted memory file. He walked straight to booth 9. He sat down, but this time he didn't speak. He waited. The napkin was already unfolded on the table. I didn't want to look, but I did. Scrawled in the center, in that same ragged red ink, was a question. Will you serve or be served? The bell above the door never rang. None of the other customers showed up. Just him. Just me. Just the booth. Donna tapped me on the shoulder. She nodded toward the kitchen. I followed. Marcus stood at the back, in front of the walk-in freezer. But tonight, the metal door wasn't icy. It pulsed, like it had a heartbeat. He held up the key Donna gave me. Your choice, Eli. Serve or be served. But once you choose, the diner remembers. What happens if I run? You'll still end up here. Only next time it'll be from the other side of the booth. I stood there for a long time, key in hand, the red ink still drying on the napkin in my mind. Then I made my choice. I turned. I walked past the freezer, toward the back wall of the kitchen, and, as promised, the wall opened. A narrow hallway, white tile, no doors, just light. I didn't look back, not until I heard him, me, speak from the diner floor. See you at breakfast. The lights flickered, the tiles beneath my feet cracked, but I kept walking, and then, just like that, the door behind me vanished. I stepped outside. The forest was still there, but the trees no longer whispered. The fog was thinner, cold but not cruel. A road waited. No sign, no traffic, just forward. I walked until my legs ached, until my lungs burned, until my mind stopped playing his voice on repeat. I never found a town, but I found people. A gas station attendant who handed me a phone before I asked. A stranger on a porch who said, "You made it out." Most don't. They didn't ask where I'd been, because maybe they already knew. I never applied for another job, never stepped foot in another diner. But every night, around 7:07 p.m., I feel it. A rumble beneath my feet, the scent of black coffee, the hum of a booth chair pulling back, and somewhere across whatever divides this world from the one underneath it, the bell above the door rings, and they come back, every single time.